We are obviously from all over the state today. This is great. So we'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully a few more people will join us. I just wanted to welcome everyone to the webinar on food product liability. My name is Sam Bloomquist, and I am the Cottage Food Program Manager for Arrow, and I will be hosting today's webinar. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to go over logistics. Today's meeting is hosted as a webinar, as we are expecting nearly 150 attendees. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, that means that all participants are muted, and in your screen you should see the presenters and not the other attendees. We will hopefully have some time at the end for questions and answers. There's a couple different question functions. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see a question box. You should be able to type your questions into that box. You should also be able to see other attendees' questions and more or less kind of ditto or vote on those. That allows us to see questions rise to the top that are important to the greatest number of people. I would remind you that this is a two-part series. So next week's workshop will review the new Montana Local Food Choice Act specifically. So questions that are very specific to that new legislation would be better addressed in next week's event. I will remind you that today's event is being recorded. We will post this video on Arrow's Cottage Food Support website. And we will email all the participants that link when the video is posted. I will take the moment to point out that that website and that page has a bunch of other resources. It has recordings of previous workshops, COVID resources, technical assistance videos, and a bunch of other helpful resources for you. We will be using the poll function today. So if you're unfamiliar with that, a screen will pop up and it has questions for you to answer. You just answer the questions and hit submit. And I will go ahead and actually launch one here in just a minute. Just want to take a couple minutes to thank our partners on this event. So this event and this workshop series is funded by a grant from the USDA Western Extension Risk Management Education Program. So we just want to say thank you to those folks. And on that note, at the end of this webinar, you will receive a survey, and we humbly ask you to participate, as it allows us to offer events like this free of charge. And it will also ensure that Arrow's work moving forward is informed by your input. So, as I mentioned, this event is being hosted by Arrow, and we would like to take just a minute here to hear from Robin Kelson, Arrow's Executive Director, about the organization and their interest in this work. So, Robin, would you like to unmute?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're just delighted to see so many people here. And for anyone who may not know about Arrow, we are a 47-year-old sustainability organization that supports Montana statewide. We were originally and primarily founded by producers who wanted to support renewable energy, renewable resources and sustainable agriculture practices that would preserve our natural resources, including our farming communities and local farms. And to that end, we've expanded our work through the years to include local food systems and helping communities build deeper resources in terms of leadership at the community level and connection and engagement among stakeholders to build more resilient local food systems. And Arrow's membership were leaders in the cottage food law design and passage from in the 2013 to 2015 timeframe, because this was a way to support our local food producers building greater resiliency and diversity for their businesses and expanding their capacity to be more profitable through the years. And WORMI has been a partner in supporting that effort with us through many years of work. And that included providing educational series in the years between 2015 until now to build knowledge among producers and consumers about cottage foods and how to support better engagement and participation at all levels across the state. And that work is now transformed through the new changes in the law through the Food Freedom Act to just provide the next level of education that is coming with the changes in the law. And so we're starting with this basic preliminary workshop, as Sam said, to provide the picture of what the risks are regarding food safety and liability under the new law. I mean, just generally speaking, because the new law changes and enhances the variety of foods that you can sell. And there's just not a whole lot of guidance at the moment, as you will discover. So anyways, long story to say, welcome everybody. We're delighted you're here. I do also want to invite you to participate in our expo, which is next week, virtual, free, online, November 10th to the 14th. It expands on the work that we're doing through this workshop, again, intended to support building engagement at the community level through all different forms of stakeholders across the food system. And you can learn more about Expo just going to our main website, which I've put in the chat box. There's a link to Expo there. Again, you just register for the sessions you'd like to attend, and I suspect you'll learn a lot, so please join us. And also there's a little button you can pick to donate if you feel inclined to support our work. We're a nonprofit 501c3 and appreciate all the donations we receive. So I think that's it, and I'm just going to pass it back to Sam, and thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks, Robin. I hope you have seen a couple polls come up. So before we move on to the person we've all been waiting to hear from, I'm just going to give you a couple more minutes to participate in that second poll. It's called Intro Questions. It's like folks are completing that. This poll is some background questions, and it helps us just figure out who is in the room. So I will give it just another like 10 seconds. We still got answers coming in. Okay. Oh, we're almost there. Okay. So I'm going to end this and I will share the results with you. So looks like we are mostly from Western Montana, but a good representation across the state. We are by far a collection of producers, followed by folks from nonprofits and other organizations. But a great mix. Sarah, to your, you appear to be the only lawyer in the room.
Thank goodness. We don't need more than one.
In looking at why we are interested in this topic, a nice mix. Folks thinking about adding new products, building resiliency, and wanting to make sure that we're passing this information on to others. And we also have a lovely mix of different products. So perfect. So thank you all for participating in that. I believe we'll have a couple more polls throughout the session. So Sarah will introduce herself more specifically, but those of you who haven't encountered Farm Commons, as Robin mentioned, the Montana Local Food Choice Act is a significant shift to the previous food legislation in Montana, and Arrow's intention in this workshop is to help us all enter this new legal space well informed. And when thinking about legal issues related to food and agriculture, Farm Commons has an unparalleled record of making legal issues applicable to producers and doing it in a way that's informative and empowering. So we are so very pleased to be able to have Sarah and Farm Commons join us today. And with that, Sarah, we will let you take it away.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I think there's some feedback here. I don't know what that's about, but I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen if that works, and we'll get started. Okay, great. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the first of two workshops that Farm Commons is co-hosting with Arrow Montana. Thank you, Arrow Montana, for giving us this opportunity to address all these opportunities and risks that come along with selling food under Montana's new food freedom law. We've divided this topic, as Robin said, into two workshops because while it's absolutely critical that you all know and understand all of the complexities of the food freedom law, it's equally critical that you first have a baseline understanding of this legal liability when it comes to food safety incidents. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And just a quick note on who I am. My name is Sarah Vale, and I live in a little mountain town called Ashland in Southern Oregon. I have a spouse, 2 boys, a cat, and 8 chickens. I've been in Oregon for 14 years, but I'm from the Midwest. I went to law school in New York at Pace Law School, and I've been lawyering in some capacity or another since 2007. And food and farming has both long been passions of mine, and probably since I discovered my first farmer's market at the age of 20. I've been with Farm Commons for a little over 3 years now, serving as staff attorney, and my job involves mostly researching the complexities of farm law and then turning it into written materials, podcasts, webinars, and so forth that farmers and non-lawyers can actually understand. This has been a great way to commingle my interests in the law and the food and farm world. So very happy to be here. And Robin already told you, or Sam told you about Farm Commons already, but just a little bit more about us. Basically, we're all about education and empowerment. Our central mission is to foster legal resilience of sustainable farm businesses. We do this through trainings, workshops, webinars, podcasts, and a huge library of written materials on our online, our website. So we bring farmers together through the Commons community. Also, it's an online forum on our website where producers can ask questions of each other and also Farm Commons staff about everything from where to find the best insurance provider in West Virginia to how to set up an LLC and get workers' compensation in Arizona. So we also have a membership program for both farmers and farm service providers, which connects members to this world of resources. And membership is what makes it possible for us to provide all these resources when you need them. So check out our program and see if our Discovering Resilience workshop and our 100+ resources are right for your needs. So let's dig in. On to the meat of the matter. So like I said, the real reason that you're all here today is to learn about Montana's new food freedom law, or Local Food Choice Act, as it's officially called. But like my son's favorite and very completely silly graphic novel, Dogman, says in each book in the series, we have this really great story to tell you. But before we can get to that story, first, we need to tell you about some other story. So here we go, the backstory. Once upon a time, people just foraged for food and hunted. They did this for themselves, their family, and others in their village, for the children, the elderly, the infirm. And then people stopped moving around all the time and settled down. As people settled in one spot and became more rooted, they planted crops in one spot and agriculture was developed. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, the Green Revolution, and the modern industrial food system we're all familiar with. People are still foraging and hunting for food in a way, but they're doing this at grocery stores, farmers markets, farm stands, giant box stores, online, restaurants, food trucks, and so on. And as our food system has exploded into this giant web of complication, so has foodborne illness. Each year in the United States, there are now about 48 million cases of foodborne illness that occur every year. And of those, 128,000 people are hospitalized and 3,000 people die. And there was actually a girl in my son's kindergarten class who got sick from E. coli. It was something she ate, I guess, and she has lifelong kidney disease as a result. So it happens and it can be really awful. And this is just the known cases. So how many cases are going unreported for lack of health insurance, doctor visits, and an inability to get the care people often need, but don't seek out? No, this is a lot of sickness. Listeria, salmonella, E. coli, norovirus, these little bugs, we all know can be a huge problem and not only make people very ill, but make farmers and anyone producing food quite ill at ease. It's these little bugs and the fear they instill in us that led to this dizzying array of food safety rules and regulations over the years, and the requirements for permits and licenses and inspections of food producing establishments. So over time, as a society, we put our foot down and fought these little bugs. We said, if you're in the business of food production, you will follow this, that, and the other rules and do all of these things to make sure these little bugs don't make their way into our food supply. And generally, this was a really good thing. The food supply became safer and people could be assured that the food they were hunting and foraging for at Walmart was rigorously tested and inspected and safe to eat. No listeria in that lettuce, so we hoped. But it also meant that the small scale producers with little time and few resources compared to the big guys were at a disadvantage. So it became hard for them to even operate in this landscape of all these rules to follow and permits to pay for. So enter stage left, cottage food laws. Cottage food laws started popping up to give these small scale producers a break. They recognized that the mom and pop operations didn't appear to be causing the big problems. It seemed to be the big scale producers, the Dole and Del Montes of the world, where the origin of the food product was hardly traceable, and spinach might sit for days in a warehouse in one state before being shipped to a store in another state for sale. And those were the ones that were truly problematic. So as a society, again, we were now won over to the idea that the little guys had better control over their product and could produce at a scale that inherently focused on food safety assurances. So the Montana Food Freedom Law is one such cottage food law, and it is one of the most highly evolved yet. And we'll get to that. But first, back to the backstory. Food safety liability. So why are we going back here? Why do we have to talk about this? Can't we just get on to the food freedom law part? You're probably wondering. Well, we have to talk about food safety liability because the reality is no matter how much freedom this new law will give you as a food producer, it still does not free you from the burden of legal liability. So as the world changed, for better or worse, and the food system grew in complexity with food safety laws and health departments and FDA this and USDA that and all those agencies and acronyms, when they all came into existence, so did the legal system. So America grew into this place where we regularly look to the legal system to settle disputes. So we are a litigious society now. And any farmer's worst fear is being hauled into court to defend themselves in a food safety incident where millions of dollars and their whole business could be on the line. Farmers don't want to be held liable. They just want to grow food. So how might this play out on a farm? How does a food safety incident come back to haunt the farm? And what can farmers do to prevent one from happening? First things first, a story. Let's introduce you to Farmer May. Farmer May is an apple farmer. She has a beautiful apple orchard on rolling hills in the idyllic countryside. Her operation is small. She has just a handful of seasonal workers, and she also has farm interns from time to time. One fall, during harvest time, her interns were harvesting apples, and one of the interns spotted beautiful ripe apples sitting on the ground. The intern put these in the basket, wanting to make sure that they weren't left to rot, as they were just as good as the ones that the other folks were picking from the trees. What the intern didn't see was that just next to the apples he picked up was a pile of deer poop. Ugh. Well, these apples eventually made their way to market and were sold at the local co-op. And then one day, Farmer May was out on the farm in the orchard when a man showed up and handed her some papers and promptly left, saying, "Have a good day." Farmer May looked through the stack, and to her dismay, she saw it was a court summons. And sure enough, she was listed as a defendant in a court case. Reading through the papers, she saw that a co-op customer had gotten very sick and that they alleged that it was her apples that caused it. This is every farmer's worst nightmare. Whatever will Farmer May do? How will she handle this issue? Well, it really depends on one key factor. Does anyone know what this is? Let's see, let's launch a little poll here and see. So we don't actually have a poll for this, it's just entering some answers in the chat box. So what do you think? What would turn this potential nightmare situation that could take down May's business into a much less painful experience? Let's see. Oh, look at that. We have some smart folks here in the audience. Yep. Okay. You're coming in. Yep. All right. I see some good answers here. It's, yeah, what a lot of folks have said is it insurance? That's right. Insurance. If Farmer May had insurance, and not just any insurance, but the right type of insurance, then this nightmare situation wouldn't be so bad. It won't be fun, but it will mean that Farmer May be able to sleep at night, knowing that this incident won't put her out of business. If Farmer May did not have insurance, then this very well might be a nightmare situation that could jeopardize her entire farm. Nobody likes insurance. I mean, nobody likes to think about it or spend time finding the right agent or worry about whether they have the right policy or especially pay the premiums or read their policy. There is nothing about insurance that is fun. Let's just get that straight. Insurance feels like something that we do because we're scared. And we also feel like we're being taken advantage of, like we're being forced to give these insurance companies our money because we're just afraid. But the reality is this is the world we live in, and it's a highly imperfect system. And yes, it is based on fear and focusing on all the bad things that might happen, and none of that feels good. But if we don't have it, as farmers, we might be put out of business. So let's say Farmer May had insurance coverage for this incident. Here's how this would have gone. Farmer May's insurance company would have provided her with an attorney to handle this claim. She would never have had to step foot in court, and she never would have to pay out of pocket for an attorney to handle her case. So that's right. When you buy insurance, you also buy built-in legal help for when things go wrong. Your monthly or yearly premiums provide you with a defense attorney who will go to bat for you if you're hauled into court to defend yourself from a liability claim. In this case, even if Farmer May was in fact found liable for selling poop-tainted apples and getting a customer sick, Farmer May wouldn't be on the hook for that. The insurance company would try their darndest to prove that Farmer May was not liable because they don't want to pay either. But if they didn't succeed, the insurance company and not Farmer May would pay for the customer's medical bills, pain, and suffering. And that picture, that's Rachel Armstrong, our executive director. She looks calm, cool, and collected, not completely happy because it's still not a fun situation, but she's not panicked. So now let's say that Farmer May didn't have insurance coverage for this incident. When she received the summons, she would need to find a lawyer to defend her, pay the lawyer out of pocket, and if at the end of the day the case didn't go her way and she was found liable for the customer's illness, she would be responsible for paying out of pocket for the customer's bills. Whether Farmer May could stay in business or not would turn on one key concept: negligence. Farmer May's attorney would argue that Farmer May was not negligent. They would illustrate to the judge or the jury all the ways that May took great care of her apples, and that she instructed her workers to pick the apples from the trees and not the ground, and that she had good protocols for washing the apples after they were harvested. And then the attorney for the plaintiff, the sick customer, would list off all the ways that Farmer May was negligent, that she didn't properly train her workers about food safety, and that she didn't have good cleaning protocols, and so on. The fate of May's farm would rest in the hands of attorneys, judges, and jurors, and that's not a peaceful position to be in. Now, let's just stick with that key concept for a moment: negligence. The legal definition of negligence is the failure to exercise care towards others, which a reasonable or prudent person would do in the same or similar circumstances. So you may be thinking, I am so careful on my farm and in my life, and I am definitely not negligent. Yuck. It feels like a dirty word. There's so much judgment wrapped up in it, so much shame attached to the word. It's a failure. It's a failure to do what's expected of people as just being human. But like I said, in relation to Farmer May, the lawyers could spend all day or all week making a case for or against May's negligence, and each would work really hard to spin whatever facts they had into an argument for or against negligence. And the point is, even the best person and the most careful farmer out there could be found negligent, because it's such a subjective standard and it's very difficult to determine. So you just don't want to have the fate of your farm business hanging in the balance of a negligence determination. Not fun. So the big takeaway again, of course, I think you all know it now if you didn't before: get insurance. But unfortunately, it's not as simple as that. We talk all the time at Farm Commons about the importance of having insurance, and this is core to the overall legal resiliency strategy that we teach. But telling people to get insurance is like telling people to eat healthy. What does that really mean? With so many options out there and conflicting information about what is healthy, vegan, keto, paleo, high carb, high fat, low fat, no dairy, gluten-free, on and on. It's really an open-ended directive. And when it comes to insurance, unfortunately, just saying get insurance isn't enough, because like figuring out what's for dinner, there are just so many options when it comes to insurance. Recently at Farm Commons, we did a project around food safety insurance. We worked with a small group of farmers with the goal of figuring out whether their insurance policies covered them for food safety. Basically, if something happened, like the poop-tainted apples on Farmer May's farm, would they be covered? all of the farmers we interviewed had farm liability insurance coverage. And most of them believed that they would be covered if a foodborne illness incident was linked to their farm. When we reviewed the policies, what we discovered was that in reality, probably none of them were covered for foodborne illness incidents. And this was a shocking realization to them. They all had farm liability policies. So shouldn't they be covered for all liabilities on the farm? One would think, but thanks to some very tricky and hard to find and even harder to understand exclusions in their liability policies, foodborne illness is one liability that their insurance policies wouldn't cover. Most of these farm liability policies have a communicable disease exclusion, and that part is key. If you see this in your policy, chances are that this means that foodborne illness caused by the bugs like Salmonella and E. coli would not be covered liabilities. If you are interested in learning more about navigating your own farm liability policy to see if you have foodborne illness liability coverage, we are on the verge of publishing a guide to help you navigate that process, and it will soon be available on our website. In the meantime, I'll leave you with 3 key takeaways about your food liability policy. So first, it most likely does not cover you for foodborne illness. Number 2, it will, however, cover you for things like injury by nail, glass, or other foreign object in your food product. And number 3, whatever it does cover you for, it will likely only cover you for liabilities that happen on the farm or from products sold at a farm stand. So for off-farm coverage, such as at a farmer's market, you will need to explore something like an agritainment or other type of endorsement. So with that, poll time. So just to make sure you really got it, a little quiz. A typical farm liability policy covers injuries from which of the following incidents? Listeria on the apples at the farmer's market, a washer or bolt in the salad mix, or E. coli on the cabbage at the farm stand? Okay, look at that. You all are smart. You really got it. Yeah, we've got most everyone coming in saying a washer or bolt in the salad mix, and that is right. So well done, everybody. Yep, the foreign objects, those will likely be covered, but whether it's on the farm or off the farm, those little bugs, probably not. Trying to see, is that little poll in the way here? Can we stop the poll? Hang on. Oh, share results, sorry. Okay, I can't tell if that little poll is in the way of.
I think you're
Close
good.
it. Okay, there we go. Okay, so moving on here. So knowing these 3 key takeaways, what is a farmer to do to protect themselves from food safety liability? The main point to know is that the farmer who is highly risk adverse and is seeing maximum legal resiliency, is looking for maximum legal resiliency, will want to have product liability insurance. So this is not your regular farm liability policy, and it's not necessarily in a general liability policy either. So this is a different beast altogether. This again is easier said and done though, because these policies can be really hard to find and also expensive. If you ask your insurance agent about it, they might not even have access to a good policy for you, a good product. And so consider searching other places, such as online. We've been hearing a lot about something called the FLIP policy, that's F-L-I-P. And, so note that we don't endorse this insurance product in any way. We have no personal working knowledge of it or connection, but we have heard from producers who have it and have heard from other ag service providers that this is a good insurance solution. So search for FLIP online and you'll easily find it. The word is that it's relatively inexpensive, $300 yearly for farms doing 50,000 or less of sales yearly, and then the price goes up when the sales are above that threshold. They have a product liability policy specifically for farmers selling at farmers markets, and another one for producers selling cottage food. So really, value added products. So worth taking a look for sure. Farmers who are still struggling to find a workable product liability policy can manage risk in other ways. So by focusing on the prevention side and having good food safety protocols in place and a food safety plan for the farm, farmers can have another means of preventing liability. Prevent the bugs from getting into your farm product to begin with. Even farms that aren't required to follow, the produce safety rule in FSMA, for example, might want to adopt the procedures laid out in the rule anyway as a way of showing no negligence, as a way of showing how safe they're being. So when it comes down to that negligence showdown, if you ever get there, you want all kinds of proof that you were acting as the reasonable and prudent farmer and were in no way negligent. So following GAP protocols or other food safety procedures is another good method of proving no negligence. And we have some resources on our website to help you with a food safety plan on your farm, and also just some food safety guides generally to help with those pieces. Also, you might want to consider forming an entity for your farm business. So if you're operating as a sole proprietor and you're on the wrong side of the V, like the plaintiff versus defendant, and you're the defendant, you may be on the hook personally if you're found liable for a food safety incident. But if, on the other hand, you form a corporation or an LLC for your farm business, you will only be on the hook for whatever business assets are within your corporation or your LLC. So that's a good way to shield your personal assets in case something really does go wrong. The bottom line here really is, even with all the food freedom in the world, you still aren't free from legal liability. So focus heavily on preventing food safety incidents through good food safety protocols on the farm. And if you're able to, protect yourself with product liability insurance. And also think about insulating yourself further with a corporation or an LLC. Okay, so now that you have a complete and total understanding of food safety liability, let's take a final poll. Let's see what's churning in everyone's mind here. What action step do you feel compelled to take now to increase your legal resiliency and reduce that food safety liability? So for producers, this might be looking into insurance or working on a food safety plan. And for ag service providers, it might be a new concept you'll share with farmers or a new way to talk about food safety liability. So if you can share, if there's anything you want to share in the chat, any action steps, we'd love to hear. And while those are coming in, I see reread my insurance policies. Great. We can move on to the final piece of this, which is questions. Question time. See another good one. Make sure to set up food safety protocols on the farm. Someone else says they already have insurance. That's great. Super helpful to pass along to producers. In the food hub I run, common questions was about product liability insurance. Yeah, form an LLC, get product liability insurance, and set up food safety protocols. Very good. Great. And then I saw a question. Well, let's see. There's somebody. Okay, somebody raised their hand. How do we do this? I don't know how to do that part.
I can
Two
I-
participants.
Okay, I will go in and I can ask them to unmute themselves. So
Okay,
one
great.
second.
Okay, and while we're figuring out that piece, we can get to some of these. Oh, you got it?
Yep, so I'm about to ask Allie Moxley
Uh-huh.
to unmute yourself.
Yes, hello. So I
Hey.
just wanted to clarify, even if farmers are just selling products on their farm, they're not taking those products to the farmers market or anything like that. Typically, normal insurance will still not cover issues related to foodborne illness, even if they're just selling on the farm.
Right. And it all comes down to what it says in the policy, but the ones that we reviewed in our project all had this communicable disease exclusion, and it's not clear cut because there is case law out there that says salmonella, for example, was not a communicable disease, but then there's case law on the other side that says that it is. So it's a red flag. It's unclear. It's impossible to say completely, absolutely, you're not covered, but if I encourage everybody to take a look at their policies, call their agent, find out what's actually in there. Don't assume that you're covered. Probably you're not. Okay. Let me take a look at these other questions. Were there other questions? Sam, I see some other raised hands. Allie, Moxley again, do you have a follow-up question?
No, sorry, I just lowered my hand.
Okay. Does that answer your question? I know it's not a great answer.
Yeah, no, that's it. I feel clear on that now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is it's definitely not anything not on farm is not going to be covered, and anything on farm is probably not covered either. Okay, I'm just going to go through some of these questions in the box here, and then if we've got live questions, we'll answer those too as they come in. Okay, so this question from Anaconda Community Foundation. As a market manager, can the nonprofit be liable for a product that is contaminated? Ooh. Okay, so you're talking about the folks who are selling at the farmer's market. If they have something that's contaminated, will the farmer's market, will the nonprofit be liable? Possibly, yes. So farmers markets will want to have good insurance too, and that's definitely available. I know there are insurance policies specifically designed for farmers markets so that the market itself has a policy. And then sometimes farmers markets will require their participating farmers to have their own policy as well. Okay, clarify, wait a minute. That's a recommendation. Okay, Lucas Mace says, hi, I'm beginning a candy cottage food application. If accepted, is insurance next? Does cottage food license cover personal sale to businesses locally? Okay, so let me break that up here. So the first question, is insurance next? Yes, I basically tell everybody that the first line of defense is insurance. You know, before you consider forming an LLC or corporation or taking any other steps to protect yourself, insurance is definitely the very top priority. So yes. And then the second piece, does cottage food license cover personal sale to businesses locally? Okay, so does the license cover selling to businesses locally? I'm not sure. I guess I don't understand the question completely. Does that I don't know if you're asking if the license covers sales, like that sounds like a licensing question and maybe not a liability question. And that sounds like something that we'll get into next week when we really dive deep into the new law.
And just to jump in on that, Sarah, under Montana cottage food law, it's a required direct consumer sale. So.
Oh, I see. Okay, the covered, right. Yeah, so that is a license question. Let's talk about that. Unless you're asking about liability coverage, let's shelf that for next week and get into what is covered under that law.
And Sarah, can you see if you click on the question and answer box, there's several questions
okay.
and I'm happy to read them to you, or if you would like to read them.
Okay, I can take a look at those now.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. I'm just gonna look at these. Okay. All right. So first one, if I had my LLC, can I sell baked goods at a small convenience store if labeled? Okay, this is another question I think I'd like to reserve for next week, if you don't mind. Can we make sure that we have these questions? Sam, is there a way to preserve these and make sure that we cover them? I just want to make sure that all the liability questions get answered first.
Yes, I will make sure that I get a record of all the questions and earmark the ones that we said we would do next.
Okay. All right. Do farmers markets need insurance for the market and vendors? That was a question I think already asked and answered. Yes and yes. Insurance all around. Yep. And it's going to be a matter of, it's different insurance for different purposes. Whether you're a vendor or the market itself, going to be different policies available. Okay. Hang on. Okay, ditto what Amber said, but about cheese, if I had separate, oh wait, I missed that one. If I had a separate consignment cooler, I don't know where that went. Right, I'm gonna move on from that for the moment because I don't know what that means. Okay, Allie says Farm Commons provides legal workshops, timely resources in the community. Oh, for farmers, ranchers, and their service providers. Yes, we do. Come join us. Danny says farmers have always been able to sell whole uncut fruits and vegetables from a harvest cut without needing a farmer's market permit, a retail food permit, or cottage food registration. How has the Food Freedom Act changed this for farmers? That's going to be a great question for next week too. Sorry, I'm not answering that at the moment, Danny, but we will really get into all of that next week. So I'm going to just look at the chat and see if we have other questions in there. Okay, Shauna Eagleton says, is there different coverage? Hang on, where'd it go? Different coverage issues regarding meat, chicken versus vegetables or prepared food. So I think you're talking about insurance coverage there. It depends on what your policy says, but mostly, sometimes there are, insurance is so tricky because there's an agreement with terms and then there are endorsements and exclusions and all kinds of things. Sometimes policies will have an endorsement for, say, raw milk or, dairy products. And so different, it just really depends on the language of your policy, what you're covered for. And again, mostly probably whether it's chicken, meat, prepared food or what, you're not going to be covered if you have just a regular farm liability policy, and you need to be looking at a product liability policy, which would cover probably all or a lot of those. Okay. Okay. Does insurance differentiate between farms and home kitchens? Okay. So this is for value added products, and that's going to be product liability. I think we'll cover all of that. There's something that the flip policy has a value added, has a cottage food policy. And So that's something really helpful to look at if you're processing in your home kitchen. A regular farm liability policy is only going to cover, certain injuries that arise out of the sale of farm products on the farm. So not value added. Once it's processed, that's completely different. It's not even, you're going to not be covered. It's considered different than farming. It's considered business activity and not covered as farm products. It's not, you're out of farming at that point under the insurance policies and laws. They don't consider that farming anymore. That is now a commercial activity. Okay, Katie Bump says, should farmers markets require vendors to have their own insurance? And it's all about risk and your comfort level with it as the farmers market. Someone had a really good recommendation, which was to check in with the Farmers Market Coalition. And they're a great resource on this. In fact, that's a good place to explore insurance too, for farmers markets as an organization, and then also for vendors. So I think if you look there, you'll find a lot of good information about best practices and what's normally done. Okay, Jan wants to know, are you familiar with cooperative that carry liability insurance for its members? That's a good question. I'm not, but that's definitely a good idea to look into group insurance, pooling the risk as a group. And I know that that can be done and is a way to really reduce the cost and make it, less expensive. So I don't have any resource to point you to, unfortunately, right now, but I know that that is, I think, in the realm of possibilities and something that should definitely be explored. Okay, Tracy says, can you address the new milk law regarding requirements for insurance? And where do micro dairies get their protection? Okay, so when you're talking about the new milk law, you're talking about the Food Freedom Act. Yeah, and we'll get into that next week. I'm sorry, I'm not covering that today. I wish I could answer that right now, but we'll take your question and you can get it right. Sam, we'll get all those questions. Yeah, so we will join us next week, Tracy, and we'll cover all of that. Tammy Howard has a good suggestion. Check here for the Farmers Market Legal Toolkit. Oh, good. Very good. So that's in the chat. Anybody who's interested in Farmers Market help, take a look there. Okay, Alex asks, policies that cover foodborne illness, cost comparison, and coverage. I don't know the cost of product liability. I mean, the flip policy is the one that I mentioned is, I think, on the cheaper side, $300 or so a year for 50,000 or less sales, annual sales, gross sales. If you're above that, it's more. I'm not sure how much more. I think that that's an inexpensive product compared to what it can be. But again, these policies are not few and far between. They're hard to find. And I wish I had better answers for you. But again, like all the farmers that we worked with on this project thought that they were covered with what they had and they weren't. So it's just not, we are not finding a lot of people that have it, that are having these policies, unfortunately. No.
Sarah, there's another question that came in the Q&A box.
Oh, yeah.
From Mackenzie. Is there insurance for food pantries that they should get if they're accepting donations from small scale producers?
Right. So if there's, should they have insurance if they're accepting donations, right, from small scale producers? Yeah. Probably. I mean, I think the blanket answer to everything is get insurance for everything. It's unfortunate and irritating, but yeah. And I don't know what that is. I'm not sure what insurance is available for food pantries. And but I'm not sure if it's similar to like a farmer's market policy or not, but yeah, I don't know. Okay. Anne asks, it looks like the new law is mainly focused on raw milk. The other product regulations are still very vague. Will this get fleshed out at some point? I think the answer is yes, and we'll talk about it in great detail next week. Yeah, sometimes these laws just come like, here's the statute, and then we'll figure out the rest later. You know, which is irritating. I mean, when the Food Safety Modernization Act was passed in 2007, I think, the rules weren't created for the produce safety rule until 2011, I think. So, you know, that's a giant law on a national level, but even at a state level, these things can take time, and it's frustrating because there's a legislative process that happens first, and then there's a administrative process with the agency, with the with the Department of Ag or whatever agency is responsible for implementing the law, and that whole rulemaking process takes time, and there's a chance for producers and everybody to weigh in on what the rule should look like, and that's really, that's where all the details are, and unfortunately the devil's in the details. So anyway, stay tuned. Okay, Sloan asks, are there different policies for meat and dairy versus vegetable and fruit? And again, this is, okay, you're going to want to look at product liability, and I don't know, probably there's, I do encourage everyone to look at the farmer's market policy, the flip folks, and I assume that policy covers all kinds of different sales at farmers markets. And I think, it's probably the case where you just, I don't know how that goes with the flip folks. But if you're working with an agent, for example, you would tell them all about your farm operation, what you sell, so they look at the risks, and then your premium is probably going to be based on your level of risk. So if you're doing riskier things like dairy, or meat, or, maybe they consider vegetables risky because of all the contamination, all the things, that's not safe either necessarily, but whatever the insurance underwriters consider to be risky, they'll charge a higher premium for. So it really just depends on your operation and what you're doing. Okay, am I missing any questions, Sam?
I don't think so.
Okay.
If folks have other questions that weren't answered, my email is on the registration link, so you can always send those to us. You can also front load any questions that you might have for Sarah for next week. Sounds like we'll have our full docket of questions for the next go round. Sarah, do you have anything else, or should I switch into letting folks know about how to get registered for the next event, etc.?
That's it. I would say if, any of your questions didn't get answered to your satisfaction right now, let's, if there's a way to get that question recorded, and if we don't have the answer right now, we can get you an answer. Just requires a little more research. So thank you for your questions. They're informative and help us find out all the answers. So thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to everyone in attendance. It looks like we had almost 100 folks here. Once again, you'll get a survey at the end of this webinar once it closes, so please take a moment to let us know your thoughts and help us craft our next educational sessions. For a reminder, next week's webinar is November 10th, 3 to 4:30. There will also be a registration link in the follow-up email if you haven't registered for that. And again, check out ARA's website for more resources. And there you can sign up for Expo as well. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. Email us with follow-up questions, and we look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone, so much.
Have a good night, everyone.
See you next week.